You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. Giant recruiting weekend this past weekend. As we know, it was the Bayou Splash, the final recruiting weekend before the dead period, a star-studded visitor list on LSU's campus, and it was fruitful. LSU picks up 2 offensive line commits. Our buddy Sam Spiegelman, national recruiting analyst for On3, good enough to join us for a couple of minutes here. Sam, we always appreciate it, man. How are you?
I can't complain, Matt. How about you?
I'm doing really well. All right, big picture takeaway, your thoughts on the Bayou Splash weekend for LSU?
Well, obviously, like you said, you got a couple of commitments, but more importantly, you got at least your full allotment of commitments, and your priority targets have been on campus for the final time, likely before they make their decisions, and if not, going into their senior seasons. In the state of Texas, they're flipping the script. They're getting ready for their seasons beginning this Monday. In Louisiana, they're not far. They've already been starting for most of these programs, so a lot of these kids are in decision mode. If you're not already committed, this was a great opportunity for Brian Kelly, for his entire coaching staff, to get another opportunity with these kids. If they're going to make a decision, LSU did not do a lot of big June official visits. They did for certain kids. They kind of took it on a case-by-case basis. So getting the allotment of kids and the quality of prospects that they did on campus in July, this was their biggest recruiting event of the entire summer.
Yeah. I want to go into the guys that LSU did get committed this weekend. We'll circle back to some of those uncommitted prospects like you talked about. Let's start with the news from today with Joseph Cryer, a kid from Louisiana who is an Ole Miss commit and flipped to LSU. Can you walk us through this one?
Yeah. The previous staff at LSU was very aware of Joe Cryer. He was getting a lot of interest from Nebraska, from Michigan State as an underclassman. He had visited LSU a few times. Area recruiters would stop by, but this summer, as crunch time got closer, he committed to Ole Miss, took an OV to Nebraska, to Michigan State, I think to TCU as well. He committed to Ole Miss, and then the LSU staff continued to do their homework. They obviously had a huge portion of the state's top 2024, 2025, 2026 kids all on campus. Joseph Cryer did not show up, but they were able to reanalyze the film. From seeing him as many times as I have the past couple of years, I mean, this kid played on one of the toughest, hard-nosed programs in the state of Louisiana. For Manny, now he's going to be the face of Natchitoches Central over there, a state championship pedigree. I think the staff, they double-checked their board, and they realized they had an SEC quality offensive lineman in their backyard. They got him on campus on Friday with his, former teammate and new commit, Tylen Singleton, and the rest is history.
What about Ori Williams out of Texas?
This is a Brad Davis specialty. Brad Davis offered this kid, Ori Williams, who, has had some off-the-field issues, related to academics, getting kind of accustomed to the varsity level there in Texas. But Brad Davis offered this kid a couple of years ago. I went to see him over there in San Marcos. Obviously had the eyes of Texas, Texas A&M, Georgia, schools across the country, Florida. But Brad Davis continued to be patient with him. He's one of those kids that, doesn't grow on trees. He's 6'7". He's got an 80+ inch wingspan. He's not a big 4 or 5 star name, but for an offensive line coach like Brad Davis, you see the length, you see the physical gifts, and you see the drive behind the scenes. He came and worked out for this staff, continued to progress. And you think with the right, weight program, with the right coaching at his position, down the line in 3-4 years as a potential starter on that offensive line with exceptional length to play a premium position like left tackle.
Sam, and Sam Spiegelman's with us on Twitter at Sam Speaks. Can you elaborate a little bit more on Brian Kelly and just the approach he and the staff are taking in recruiting the offensive line?
Oh my God. I mean, well, Matt, you and I have been in this state for a long time, and offensive line for year in and year out has just been a polarizing topic. You have to credit, first off, in the state of Louisiana a couple of years ago when Will Campbell came around, that kind of changed the tune. The offensive linemen do not routinely come out of this state. And when Will Campbell got there, he was a priority for Coach Ed Orgeron. And as soon as Brian Kelly got situated, Will Campbell, not far behind. Then you look with guys like Emory Jones, Lance Hurd. These are nationally recruited offensive linemen that have been, easy gets for LSU. And I say that knowing the extent of their recruitment. They could be national. LSU has locked them in very easily. That's a credit to Brad Davis staying on this staff. He's a Baton Rouge guy at heart, and when you talk to people about Brad Davis, you hear from year to year about coaches that, hey, he could be an offensive coordinator or a head coach. Brad Davis has had those opportunities to take bigger roles at other schools and has elected to stay at LSU on Brian Kelly's staff. That's resonated with the kids, and it has national appeal. He's going into states like North Carolina, Texas, Mississippi. Like I said, Louisiana does not grow offensive linemen like on trees. Will Campbell and Lance Hurd and Emory Jones are exceptions. So he has a national appeal, and he's also locking down the state. And to his credit, he's also been locked dead on a lot of his evals so far.
Sam Spiegelman on Twitter at Sam Spiegs, national recruiting analyst for On3. Sam, I don't know that I've ever, you obviously cover recruiting in super detail nationally. I don't know that I've ever heard a recruit leave a visit and go, man, that was just a terrible time. Every recruit, I mean, you're sort of wooed while you're on campus, right? I mean, they roll out the red carpet for high school kids. So of course everybody's going to have a good time. But can you kind of put some, through your lens, some context around the Bayou Splash this weekend with Colin Simmons being on campus, Caden Durham, his teammates, Dominic McKinley, the number one player in Louisiana who's uncommitted. Can you kind of just give us some context of how the weekend went for LSU?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, LSU did not have a really big June in terms of a nationally big official visit weekend. For LSU, they take a different approach. Some schools, and you've seen it, like with Clemson piling up the 5 stars last month. That was a product of a massive June official visit weekend. You've seen it with Florida State and a couple other schools, across the country. LSU took things a little bit different, and in that case, they fell behind with some of these recruitments. Colin Simmons and Dominic McKinley in particular. 2 of their priority targets, one obviously being the number one edge in the country, Colin Simmons from Duncanville, and Dominic McKinley, the 5-star defensive lineman out of their backyard in Acadiana. Dominic McKinley, obviously Jimmy Lindsey is new to LSU. He's replacing Jamar Cain now with the Denver Broncos, and really replacing Gerald Chapman, their GA, who's now the Tulane defensive line coach. That's a big gap for Dominic McKinley to make up with LSU, and as he then took official visits to Ohio State, Oklahoma, A&M, and Texas. In this process, Jimmy Lindsey trying to get him on campus. Frank Wilson has taken a massive role. He's the associate head coach, and for anyone who's listening and doesn't know, I call him the Godfather. He knows the state like the back of his hands, has gotten more involved with recruits like Dom McKinley, like Colin Simmons. I can tell you after this visit, leading into the whole summer, the recruitment around Dominic McKinley has been about the out-of-state schools being front and center, namely Texas, but also a lot of buzz about Oklahoma. I can tell you after this weekend, LSU has closed that gap tremendously. I would say it's an LSU-Texas race right now, and a decision probably isn't too far off. And I think if you're LSU, you have to like where you are compared to where you were this time last week.
Dominic McKinley,
Like Colin Simmons.
No, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I think your phone cut up. No, please finish.
Yeah, and then for Colin Simmons, similar story. I mean, he's the number one edge in the country. Obviously, a huge priority in the state of Texas for the Longhorns. After his official visit to Texas, the RPM on 3 started to really favor Texas. People thought that a commitment could be in July in favor of Texas. I can tell you LSU was an early favorite in Colin's recruitment. And after this weekend, it feels like a coin flip between Texas and LSU. There's confidence in Baton Rouge. There's confidence in Austin. A decision could come as soon as August. It could go as deep as December. He's the number one edge in the country, and everyone will wait for him. But I can tell you again, if you're LSU and you were maybe playing behind for a kid from Texas or in June, it seems like a level playing field at least going into August.
On Twitter at Sam Spiegs. Hey, one more for you, kind of a big picture here with LSU. They sit at 22 commits right now, Sam, if I'm not mistaken. It's 21 or 22. There's no more hard cap at 25. Any idea for this coaching staff what that target number is based on who's still available, what positions they'd still like to address?
Yeah, no, I think that, that 25-ish number is still pretty good. I mean, look at the target. They have their quarterbacks. They have a couple of spots open for receivers. You know that their main two targets are Dom McKinley and Colin Simmons on the defensive front, and that's, obviously a premium position that they're willing to extend. But, I also expect that a couple of their guys maybe don't stick until signing day. They've had a couple of commits visit rival schools in the past week. That could open the door, and I could see it being above 25 because they also have to factor in all these transfer portal additions that might just pop up in August after a couple of these fall camp battles.
It never slows down in recruiting season. It was a big one this weekend for LSU there at the Bayou Splash. Sam Spiegelman, make sure you follow him on Twitter at Sam Spiegs, national recruiting analyst for On3Sports. Great stuff, Sam. Always great to chat, man. I appreciate you.
Yep, have a good one, Matt.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.